Well, welcome to Healing Insights from the Book of Psalms. I'm Dr. David DeRose. I'm glad that each one of you have joined us today. We'll be opening things up very briefly for dialogue, but I wanted to set the stage with a little background on this book. Why would we talk about healing insights from the Book of Psalms? So before we dive into the topic, because we are looking at a book of the Bible, I did want to ask especially for God's blessing as we begin. Let's pray together. Father in heaven, we thank you for an opportunity to open really your word. And we're aware that folks joining us for this program may or may not be people with a background of necessarily faith in the Bible, but they may just be curious, wanting to learn. We pray that whatever backgrounds we represent as we study together, that you would guide us, and we thank you for it. In the name of our loving Creator, amen. Well, tonight we're looking at this very, very important topic, which is, I believe, healing insights from the Book of Psalms. And I think it's going to be an encouraging journey for every one of you as we look at this very, well, I would say life-changing study. And it's going to be a dialogue. We're going to be hearing from you, but as we began tonight, I wanted to really give you some background that I think is relevant to the topic. And I begin with a question, and actually, I'm open to hearing from you about it. So, where do you go when you, well, are ill, when you're sick? Where do you typically head to? I'm just kind of, open to hearing from any of you. If you're ill, what are you going to do? What's your first impulse? I think all of you are muted right now, but if you unmute, you can get a word in there. Okay, some of you are having challenges. Let's see if we can fix that for you. Okay. Okay, see if that works a little better. Can I get some
Yeah,
feedback from anyone? There we go. So where do you typically head when you're ill or sick?
we would go to the ER or our family doctor.
Okay, so one person says I go to the ER or to a family doctor. What about some of the others of you?
Um, Hi. Yeah, I probably do the same, but sometimes I just try to rest. Might go to bed.
Okay, so you go to basically rely on your own medical acumen. Actually, I mean, you might expect that from a physician, but I mean, we're not supposed to treat ourselves, but if it doesn't seem to be something too serious, and I think our first participant wouldn't say for everything we're going to rush to the ER or the hospital, but if it's something of some gravity, right?
Mhm.
Well, I asked
Of
that
course.
question, right, right. Thanks for clarifying that. So here's the deal, though. When it comes to the book of Psalms, are there really healing insights that we would want to turn to in certain situations? And we really want to look at this in what to me is a very interesting perspective. This is my premise, and that is an understanding of, believe it or not, psychology, as well as the original title of the book that we now call Psalms, leaves us, I believe, with no question, but that this book, at least one of its purposes, is about healing. And why I say that is because, well, think about it this way. The original Hebrew title of the book of Psalms is Tehillim. And if any of you are Hebrew speakers, I know you'll pardon my uh, struggling with the Hebrew, but this word literally means praises. So if you were to live in the days of Jesus or in the days of the patriarchs or the prophets of old, and you were referring to this book, you would call it the book Tehillim. And Tehillim means praises. And one commentary that I was reading said you could say this concept of praise is really the central theological theme of the entire book of Psalms. And what I would add to that is there's now a compelling connection between praise, gratitude, and optimal mental health. So I want to just look at that with you. Some of you have heard of this term, the positive psychology movement. And basically, I know psychology for some people is a great word. For other people, it doesn't conjure up the best of images. But the positive psychology movement, I think, has a lot in harmony with a biblical worldview. And basically, the positive psychology movement says, hey, you can heal your brain, you can improve your brain performance by focusing on things that are good, focusing on the positive, dwelling on things that are praiseworthy. So if you think about this, if we're going to be reading a book about praise, those who understand this concept of positive psychology, they would say, well, if you're going to be praising, you're going to be focusing your brain on something that is very healing. So Stacy, I see is sharing a comment here. Stacy, why don't you share what you just put in the chat there and share that perspective with us?
I thought that went to everyone. I'm sorry if it was just to you.
Oh, no, but I
Oh,
wanted you to share it, so
oh,
we get your interaction.
okay. I've been keeping a gratitude journal for a long time. And it started out with this book. It doesn't really matter what, but it was about 1,000 gifts of being thankful. And so I am over 1,000 now. I have like almost close to probably 1,700 things that I've been thankful for over, I don't really know how many years. It's been a while.
Okay.
But I've been more diligent in probably the last 3 years. And I try to write it at least every other day. Sometimes it's only once a week because I'm busy or whatever, but I try to think of something that I'm thankful for, even when I'm going through a hard time, because there's always something that you can be thankful for. And it does make my attitude and my just have a little bit more of there's truth to being thankful and how it affects your body. I don't know how to explain it. It just
No, that's well put. Appreciate you sharing that. And that's really, part of what the Psalms is all about, really at their heart. They're dealing with this concept, really. And this is from Australia's Positive Psychology Institute. Positive psychology is the scientific study of human flourishing and an applied approach to optimal functioning. It has also been defined as the study of strengths and virtues that enable individuals, communities, and organizations to thrive. So if we were to say, why are the Psalms healing? We've been speaking about this first one. They focus on positive virtues, positive qualities, and they actually celebrate those virtues, just like Stacy was sharing, not in the form of you writing your own gratitude journal, but if you will, the Psalms walking you through reasons to be grateful. So you say, but I don't know what to be grateful for. Well, just start reading the Psalms. And we'll talk a little bit more about this tonight, because what I'm trying to do for you this evening is give you an overview. What we're planning to do from week to week is actually walk through the Psalms. Starting next week with Psalm 1 and actually going through the book of Psalms. And we're not going to be constrained by any artificial time limits on how much time we have to take or how much we have to get through. So we really want to do kind of a deep dive into the book of Psalms. So first of all, the Psalms are healing because of this aspect of their being focused or centered on praise. But I want to point out several other things why I believe the Psalms are healing. The second one I've put here is they deal with life's most difficult issues, and they offer help and perspective in those difficult settings, in those contexts, those difficult contexts. A third thing that I think is especially needed today is the Psalms connect us with community. Fourth, they actually focus on the character of God. And then fifth, I'd like to suggest that in many ways they reveal what we call the incarnate Christ. They pointed forward to Christ's ministry on this earth and his ongoing ministry for us. So let's take a little bit deeper look at some of these things. So first of all, this interesting aspect to the Psalms as Tehillim, this as books of praise. Now, what is interesting, and I want you to help us here. So anyone who's got a Bible handy, hopefully you brought your Bibles along, or you've got some kind of electronic device. We're talking about the Psalms as books of praise. It seems if you read through the Psalms or even just kind of glance through them, that the last third of the book of Psalms is especially focused on praise. And as the book of Psalms ends, it like ratchets that up. Those last 5 or 6 Psalms are just praise, praise, praise. Why doesn't someone, if they'd be so kind, as to open up a Bible and pick a place in Psalm, 145, 146, anywhere in the book of Psalms, and just start reading a few verses for us. I'm grabbing my Bible as well. And if you're having trouble getting my attention, just send something through the chat, because it's hard to see everyone on my screen at the same time sometimes. So if someone has something, okay, please go ahead, Stacy.
This is from the New Living Translation. What do you want me to read? Just like 1 through 10, or?
Well, pick. I'm just saying, pick something in Psalm between Psalm 145 to 150, and just read a few verses or several verses. Yeah. And tell us what you're reading from.
It's Psalms 145, the New Living Translation, and this is verse 1 through 3. I will exalt you, my God and King, and praise your name forever and ever. I will praise you every day. Yes, I will praise you forever. Great is the Lord. He is most worthy of praise. No one can measure his greatness.
Okay. So what about anyone else? Just looking through those last few Psalms, anyone else see something that resonates with them? Some words of praise.
Praise the Lord, Psalm 146. Praise the Lord, O my soul. While I live, I will praise the Lord. I will sing praises to my God while I have my being. Do not put your trust in princes, nor in a son of man, in whom there is no help. His spirit departs. He returns to this earth. In that very day, his plans perish. Let me see there at the end. The Lord watches over the strangers. He relieves the fatherless, the widow. But the way of the wicked he turns upside down. The Lord shall reign forever. Your God, O Zion, to all generations. Praise the Lord.
Amen.
Thank you for sharing that. So you read through these last Psalms, and we've encouraged folks to join this study, whether they come from a Bible-based perspective or not. They might just be curious about what healing aspects might be found in the book of Psalms. And we're going to look at some things that tonight, regardless of where you stand in the spiritual spectrum, I think you're going to find encouragement. But here in these closing Psalms, it's especially extolling the God of heaven. And if you come from that perspective, whatever your religious background is, I believe and I've experienced a real living God. And so as I read through those Psalms, those closing chapters, I can't help but be encouraged. If I listen to them on audio, it just lifts your spirit, because it's talking about things that are praiseworthy and encouraging. So this is one of the things that I believe is so healing about the book of Psalms. But I want you to look at the second bullet point here. And that second bullet point emphasizes the fact that the earlier portions of Psalms often feature praise in the midst of difficulty. And there's even what you might call Psalms of lament, or crying or complaining, if you will. So you say, well, how does that all tie in with that? Well, let's take a look at an example, and we're talking about healing, finding healing in the book of Psalms. And I'd like to suggest that Psalms offers us healing on every level of our being. So we kind of started out when I asked where you go for healing. Most of us were thinking of physical healing, right? Going to the hospital, going to the ER. But some of the things that wound us the most, some of the things that we need healing from the most, are things in the social and in the spiritual realm. And one of the things that's especially devastating when it comes to social relationships is betrayal, especially when it comes from someone who loves you, someone that you're close to, someone that you love, that you expect to be trustworthy. And although we'll look at this psalm in some detail in the near future, I wanted to use it as an example tonight. It's Psalm 3. And some of the Psalms, a minority of them, will give us some background as to when the Psalm was written. Psalm 3 is one of those, and it's identified as a Psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son. And in a few weeks, when we get to this, we'll look at this story. Many of you may be familiar with it. So David's own son, Absalom, the prince, rebels against his father and seems determined to kill his father and secured the throne for himself. I mean, what kind of betrayal is that? And what's fascinating to me about this psalm is how it starts. So it really starts out as a song of, or a psalm of lament. David says, Lord, how they have increased who trouble me. Many are they who rise up against me. Many are they who said of me, there is no help for him in God. So David has left the capital. He's left the palace of Jerusalem. He's on the run. And it looks like Absalom has the upper hand. And David is not only losing, but has lost. And so people are saying, hey, it's over for David. There's no help for him. So that's the context. So put yourself in that context. Maybe you're feeling there's some emotional, social wounds in your life. Maybe they've been going on for a long time. Maybe people say to you, your life is a mess. There's no help for you. Well, what David does in this context to me is amazing. So David is not writing after this is all resolved. He's writing while he's on the run. That's the context. And here's what he says next. He says, but you, O Lord, are a shield for me. You're my glory and the one who lifts up my head. And then he calls on his past experience. He says, I cried to the Lord with my voice, and he heard me from his holy hill. So what David is doing in the midst of this most extreme of social stressors, he's actually praising God. He said, you're a shield for me. You've protected me in the past. You're my glory. And he's focusing and, if you will, savoring, dwelling on the God who has delivered him previously. I've spoken on this topic in a number of settings. I was actually just speaking to a group of churches at a retreat this weekend, and I spent a little time with this concept of savoring in contrast to yearning or hoping. And let me just take a few minutes with this, because I want you to see what David is doing in Psalm 3 and how this element of savoring is something powerful that the Psalms offers us as far as healing. So when we're going through difficulties, yes, hoping, thinking of something better, yearning, longing for something that we can see being accomplished in the distant future. Yes, all those things can encourage us when we're going through difficulties. But savoring is especially powerful. And David, I talked about him praising. He's also savoring. And I want you to see this. So first of all, let me give you a definition of savoring. You might be thinking of a meal or food, but savoring has been defined as the capacity to attend to appreciate, and enhance the positive experience in one's life. So this is a psychological concept. And I would suggest to you that David is doing this. He's appreciating, he's thinking what God has done in the past. Savoring, the psychologists tell us, is the ability to focus one's attention on positive experiences and to modify one's thoughts and behaviors in ways that intensify and prolong positive feelings. So I want you to think about the book of Psalms as offering us some practical lessons in the art of savoring, because savoring positive experiences can promote greater resilience and well-being through an increase in positive feelings. Think about it. David's on the run. He could be thinking about, how could my son be doing this? Why did my people go with Absalom? Why are so many on his side? Why have some of my most faithful counselors and leaders gone over to Absalom? But no, as he's writing this psalm, he's focused on what? On how God has been his shield, how God has protected him. He is savoring his relationship with God. Now, why I'm sharing this with you is, you go through the book of Psalms, I want you to be thinking about some of these concepts, because some are going to, talk about some difficult things in life. In the midst of those difficulties, as you read through the psalm, realize that the psalmist is calling out to a God that he believed heard him and that he could trust his well-being with. So if you look at savoring research, they have found that savoring now has power not only in the college students and stuff where they initially studied this in universities, but also in older individuals. This is a study that I've particularly enjoyed. It was published not all that long ago in one of the gerontology journals, looking at 111 adults 60 and over. It was just a 1-week savoring exercise, a savoring intervention. And what they found is people that just did this for 1 week, if they followed them over a period of 3 months, they were less likely to be depressed and have depressive symptoms. They were more likely to be happy. They were more resilient when difficulties came. And I'm suggesting to you the Psalms accomplish some of these very same purposes. It's like a course in savoring. And let me show you why. So what does a savoring intervention look like? Why would I compare the book of Psalms to a savoring intervention? Well, the way you increase positive feelings through savoring is you can reminisce about past events. You can savor present moments, or you can anticipate future pleasures. Take some notes, because as you go through the book of Psalms, I'd like to challenge you to say, where are we reading about things that have happened in the past? Let's just stop right here, because I said Psalms 145 through 150 are especially about praise, and I'm trying to say there's this element of savoring in it. So help me out. I want you to be involved here. It's a dialogue format. So go to those last 5 Psalms again, and someone finds something in one of those Psalms where this person writing the Psalm is savoring something. They're thinking about something that's either happened in the past, something that's going on in the present, or something that they're anticipating in the future. And we'd like to hear from you. And if another psalm is coming to mind, not the last 5, you're thinking, well, this fits right in with this psalm. I'll open up the dialogue to any psalm that resonates with you. Okay, I see a number of you working hard. I see the wheels turning, those of you that I can see visibly on screen.
Psalm 150, praise God in the sanctuary. Obviously, there was a beautiful experience while worshiping and being together in fellowship, praising God together for all that.
I love this.
That he has done, and even all with instruments and just beautiful, powerful.
Yeah, thank you for directing us to that, Ursula. So if you look at Psalm 150, yes, there's all these instruments that are mentioned, right? And what you captured is this idea of coming into God's sanctuary, and you connected that with a worship experience, being with others, and that's beautiful. How about anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead, Jan.
Okay. I like Psalm 147 too. I mean, they all are awesome, all the Psalms and the praising, because I like the praise you, the Lord, for it is good to sing praises unto our God. It is pleasant and praise is comely. And he healeth the broken heart and bindeth up the wounds. And I believe that so much. And I think I've done that a lot. And I want to ask you how to convey to someone, and I've got two people in mind. My sister is one, who you mentioned earlier. It says up here to reminisce about past events and savor present moments. What if the things they are reminiscing about and the only things they can remember are the really depressing things to them?
Okay, well, let's answer the question, because that's what we've got next in the slides.
Okay.
Yeah, because so we can focus on the positive things, which the Psalms do. They do also expose us to some things that are, you might say, negative if they're not put in the proper context. So let's look at this element. So we talked about the first one, what savoring interventions look like, the positive things to think on. But savoring can also be increased by avoiding just what you're talking about, Jan, by reducing the thoughts and behaviors that dampen positive feelings. So if we shouldn't be focusing, if we want to amplify this savoring experience, don't focus on your own flaws or flaws of other people. Don't focus on, well, if I say, did you have a nice time when you went out to the park? You could either savor, oh, the flowers were beautiful, and it was, the birds were singing, or you could say, but it was raining, it was misty, and I was cold. So we can choose. So as we go through the Psalms, we're going to read some kind of sobering things, but at the end of the story, what do you end up focusing on? And the researchers call these dampening responses. They dampen your ability to get this savoring benefit. So dampening responses such as distraction, in other words, not focusing on the positive thing. You're distracted by the rain, or the that there's someone talking when you just wanted peace in the garden. Fault finding. This is a classic one in our society. It seems is placing a great value on this today. The more you can find fault, but this is destructive to our own happiness. And these things, they are associated with greater depressive symptoms, lower positive affect. That means a less positivity, and actually lower life satisfaction. So, yeah, how do we help someone, encourage them to catch this theme of savoring? So here's an exercise. And these presentations will be recorded. You can invite someone to watch it, or you can say, well, they might not watch the whole hour, but it's from you look at the time right now, about what, 25 minutes into the program. Go through this exercise. And so you could do this right now if you want. And it can be drawn from the Psalms or from your own experience. And this is what researchers do to increase the savoring response. They have someone think of something positive. Again, it can be happening in the present. It can be a pleasant memory. It can be something positive that will happen in the future. So, in response to what Ursula shared, you could think of a great worship experience in a sanctuary, like what you shared, Jan. Not only does the Lord heal the brokenhearted, but he helps us to be agents of healing. You may think of someone you had the privilege of being a blessing to, and how they said, oh, thank you for, helping me with that. Mm-hmm. You're dwelling on something, a pleasant memory, something positive. Maybe it's going to happen in the future. You have some future expectancy. You're going to be going to a wedding in a couple of weeks. That's my situation. My youngest son is getting married. So I could be thinking, with a positive expectancy about that wedding. So ask yourself then, if you want to enhance the savoring, what's so enjoyable? In other words, try to immerse yourself in the experience. And the Psalms tend to do that. They, just like Psalm 150, it doesn't say just pray with a lot of instruments. It's enumerating them. Kind of see all those instruments in your mind's eye, if you will. And then really kind of amplify those positive feelings. What are you feeling? It's, are you sensing, are you amused by what you're seeing? Are you excited? Does it give a sense of contentment? Really kind of dwell on that experience and then take a moment to appreciate it. And that's, if you think about it, that's what the Psalms are doing. Praise is actually appreciating God for something he has done. When it says praise the Lord, you have to praise him for something, praise him for who he is. Some of the Psalms emphasize God's character, others emphasize what he's done, others emphasize how he's helped you individually. So see that in the Psalms, opportunities to savor these experiences. And the bottom line is like you alluded to, Jan. We can either choose to savor and reinforce these positive emotions, or we can dampen those positive emotions by turning our attention to more negative thoughts. So here's something you could look, if you were to look through the book of Psalms, or if you were to expand it, the whole Bible, the word praise appears 248 times in the King James Version of the Bible. Many of those times are in the book of Psalms. Remember, in the Hebrew, Tehillim, or praises, that's what the Hebrews called this book. So I want to come back to this because Ursula drew us really to this third point. And I want to spend a little time with it, and then we're going to open things up a little bit more again. But I really believe the Psalms connect us with community. And I feel this is really, really important today. And that's why we're doing this as an interactive experience. So tonight, it's an overview. You might say, oh, well, it could have been more interactive. When we go actually through the Psalms, we're going to want people taking turns reading through the Psalms. We're going to want people sharing their feedback. What do you hear when you read this? How does it connect with you? And by the way, we're happy for all of those of you who are joining us and haven't said anything. Maybe you haven't even shown your face. Maybe your name isn't even showing on the Zoom screen. It just says, happy to be here. Okay. So you're welcome to join in whatever way. And many, we've had, I want to say, maybe 60 people who've registered for this experience. So some may not be joining in real time and just, watching the recordings. But I really invite people to see this as an opportunity for a community. Invite someone to join us. If there's someone you want to interact with, someone that you feel might benefit from this journey, feel free to invite them as well. And why I believe it's so powerful as far as Psalms having us, connecting us with community. If you look at the structure of the book of Psalms, it's fascinating. Next week, we're planning to look at Psalm 1. From the very beginning of the book of Psalms, you look at the first 20 verses. Within the first 20 verses of Psalms and within the last 20 verses, you see that there is this explicit connection with other people. So when you read through Psalm 1, when you come to verse 5, you'll see the psalmist is speaking about the followers of God, that they are in the congregation of the righteous, or the assembly of the righteous. They're in fellowship, they're in community. And as you go to the last verses in the book of Psalms, we looked at the very last verses in Psalm 150, and you saw there, that brought our mind, the sanctuary brought our mind to worshiping communally for many people. But if that doesn't do it, Psalm 149, explicit in verse 1, praise the Lord, sing to the Lord a new song, his praise where? In the assembly of his faithful people. Sing his praises in the congregation of saints. What I would say to you, if you take the book of Psalms seriously, you would say, I can't just go through this book alone. I have to go through it with other people. And so that's why we're doing this interactively, why we've made this platform available for people, because I'm finding more and more people. They say, I'd love to interact with people, but I don't get out of my house, or it's not safe. A lot of meetings happen at night. I can't drive at night. I don't have, there's no fellowship of believers close to me. And so we're starting this virtual community going through the book of Psalms. And it's just not me saying that this is something that is designed for a community. The book of Psalms, I would say, is shouting at us saying if you wanted to really go through the book of Psalms, you can't go through it on your own. Now, here's the other interesting dimension to this. I've been reading through a number of commentaries, and one of them is this commentary by Gerald Wilson. It's simply Psalms Volume 1. And I love this illustration. I want to read this to you. He says, picture yourself as one of a crowd, packed together with thousands of others, shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow, to experience as one a common event. And maybe some of you have been in situations like that. Maybe you've been at a sporting event or some gathering. I was in a venue where I was speaking this weekend. Someone told me, oh, there's on 4th of July, there's hundreds of people, thousands of people in this venue just packed together to see the fireworks. So imagine yourself in a crowd for a common event. Wilson then says, if you can imagine such a setting or recall one from your own past, then you have some sense of what reading the book of Psalms ought to be like. For whenever we crack open this biblical book and read from its collection of 150 songs, whenever we allow ourselves to become truly immersed in the world they bring to life, we're taking our stand within a huge crowd of the faithful who have sung the Psalms throughout the generations of the people of God.
Wow.
The Psalms and their origins span a period of almost 800 years. Now, that's really remarkable because if you think about the Bible, and you think about the books of the Bible, often the books of the Bible bring us into a very narrow focus of time. You know, you read Paul's letters, they were written at a specific time for specific people. You read the book of Acts, I mean, it takes in a longer period of time, but it's just a period of a few decades. You read the Gospels, they're just, you know, basically mostly 3.5 years. And so, but the Psalms span a period of almost 800 years. And since their origin, the Psalms have constantly been on the lips of the faithful from that time to this. The Psalms have constituted the core repertory of believers from their origin to the present day. That means, if we take even the most conservative estimate, that the Psalms represent a common religious heritage for practically 3 millennia, 3,000 years. So you catch what? So we're opening this book. It's designed to be read in community, but it's not just connecting us with with those of us, for example, tonight who are studying the book. It's connecting us with believers throughout history, people who've come to the pages of the Bible, people who've sung the pages of the Bible. And why I say that? Because we looked at the Hebrew name for this book, Tehillim, but it's called the Book of Psalms because that's a term that comes from the Greek, psalmos. When the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek, the translation that did that is, or at least one of them, is called the Septuagint. It's abbreviated LXX. So, and that refers to 70. It's believed that 70, there's all kinds of traditions about the Septuagint that 70 scholars or rabbis translated, you know, from Greek, Hebrew into Greek. But anyway, the term psalmos in Greek, from which we get the book of Psalms, it literally has come from another Hebrew term, mizmor, which means a composition or song performed to musical accompaniment. So many of the Psalms, they actually have this heading, that this is a mizmor in the Hebrew. This is a song. It's to be sung with musical accompaniment. And just like we read in Psalm 150, it's not just one instrument. It takes an orchestra, if you will, to do justice to the Psalms. What I'm trying to help you see is the name of the book of Psalms. The way the Psalms are organized, it pulls us into community. It says this is a book that you want to go through with other people. Psalmos, similar to that meaning of you saw the Hebrew word earlier, mizmor. Psalmos is similar in meaning. It designates a song sung to the accompaniment of the harp. So now it's a specific instrument. So the Hebrew, more general, but the point is, it's talking about something that you do with other people. You sing these psalms together. You come like Ursula pointed to us to in Psalm 150. You come into the assembly of the righteous. You come into the sanctuary and you sing these words of praise. So with that
Perhaps you
background,
also, oh, forgive me.
go ahead. So, no, not forgive
Perhaps-
you. It's dialogue,
but
so share with us.
Perhaps you also, we do this commonly in our congregation to have a call to worship where there's a reader and the congregation responds. It involves everyone to with our voices, not necessarily with music. That is such an intriguing thought, to have music perhaps played at the same time when you together read this word of God, standing in the
Amen.
Yes.
presence of God.
Very good, very good. Yes, and many of the Psalms, even in English, have been put to music. So these
Yes.
and many of the annotations as we go through the book of Psalms, we don't always understand what they all mean, but they're believed to be, musical things. Like maybe there's a period of rest or a musical interlude. There's certain terms that are used in the Psalms that are believed to suggest that it's definitely annotations that were designed for something that was to be sung. So let's take a look at this and this list now. And I want to hear from you because we've talked about these first three, but what about other things? Other things that you found healing about the Book of Psalms? It doesn't have to be on this list. I'm interested to to hear from any of you.
Psalms 46:1 is one of my favorite. I mean, I have a lot of favorite verses, but that's one of my favorites because the fact that God is an ever-present help in trouble, and this world is trouble. So that comforts me to know God is ever present, no matter what. And I'm just so thankful, and that comforts me on so many levels.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Stacy. And you're all welcome to turn there to Psalm 46 because it does really amplify what Stacy's sharing. I mean, if you wanted to just memorize a short verse, something that is praiseworthy, right? God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. But the psalmist doesn't stop there. He says, therefore we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling. And then he turns his attention to heaven, the holy place and the tabernacle of God. And as you just read through that, how many of you see this element of savoring, that you could put that to practice with Psalm 46? Who can maybe apply some of that for us tonight?
Yeah, can you imagine in the midst of all this chaos and trouble, God is there with me? That's very powerful.
That's exactly right. And it's interesting because
And then it
like
comes the
we're talking,
invitation to be still, just be still,
Yes.
don't be anxious, don't fear, don't worry. Be still and know that I'm God. I'm exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with you. Yeah, the God of
Amen.
heaven and earth is with me. That's so powerful.
Amen.
Amen.
so we have these healing words, and it is interesting. I appreciate you highlighting that, Ursula, that the call is to be still in verse 10 of Psalm 46 and know that I'm God. In the midst of all this cataclysm, I mean, how could you be still if the earth is being moved, the mountains are being carried into the depth of the sea? But there used to be this saying, don't just stand there, do something. They told us in medicine, sometimes the saying should be, don't just do something, stand there. Sometimes we rush to do something, even in an emergency situation that may be counterproductive. And so God is asking us to pause, even in the midst of challenges. And it starts out, as Stacy pointed us, realize that God is our refuge. He's our strength when we're in trouble. So do we focus on the trouble, or do we savor the God who's been faithful, like David did in Psalm 3? What about other thoughts? Anything from the Psalms, any Psalm that, Stacy shared something that was meaningful to her, anything, why you see healing power in the Psalms?
Well, I grew up very afraid of everything before I knew the Lord. I came to know about him when I was entering college, but as a child, I was very, very fearful of everything. And kids are afraid of the dark and everything. And well, when I read Psalm 121, and it says that God doesn't slumber or sleep,
Amen.
and it gives this assurance that he watches over his people. I mean, what a life-changing realization that has been for me in my life. And this was probably 20 years ago that I learned this, but it has changed the way it's freed me from fear, because I know that God doesn't take a lunch break, or he doesn't take a vacation day. He is watching over his people. He's not taking a nap.
Tremendous, tremendous. Yeah, and that, those first couple of verses, in Psalm 121, some of the translations translate as a question. I will lift my eyes to the hills, from whence comes my help? Where does my help come from? Or I will lift up my eyes to the hills, where my help comes from, is a statement, looking to God. But my help comes from God, the Lord, who made heaven and earth. And then, like you point out in verse 3, the one who keeps you, who watches over you, will not slumber. He will neither, verse 4, slumber or sleep. So savor this. Someone help me. What does it look like if you're going to savor a God who never slumbers or sleeps? What are you going to be thinking about?
Just sleep, just rest, and let him fight whatever is going on.
Okay.
Amen.
And also his love for us, complete love. I feel whenever I read so many of the Psalms, it's like it's just such an uplifting, it's so easy to savor, as you call it, to savor it, because it does just give you such an uplifting, hopeful picture from all the words. And my help cometh from the Lord, and I just find great courage and encouragement in that.
And I think that's what's so powerful about the book, because it speaks to so many aspects of the human experience. Like we have projected in this point number 2, that the Psalms deal with life's most difficult issues. They offer help and perspective in those contexts. So just like we saw in Psalm 46, speaking about challenges, or even here in Psalm 121, it's speaking about the practical help that God gives. And so a lot of times, again, we could focus on the negative, or we could focus on the positive.
Right.
Other thoughts tonight, things that resonate with you. You think of the Psalms as a book of healing. And thank you for these personal experiences, Tina. I love that. And Tina or Tina Marie, I'm not sure, how you prefer to be referred to. But appreciate that, that personal testimony that God used the Psalms to heal you of fear, to step into your life and say, I have you covered. I'm not going to forget you. I'm watching over you. What about other thoughts tonight? Well, let me share a few things with
I
you then.
say,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry.
No, please.
Well, again, I'm not trying to damper the savoring, but I'm just being realistic. In this world, there's a lot of trouble and there's a lot of
Uh-huh.
things. I'm not going to go into details, but I've had loss. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we got.
And there is things I've gone through with my children and different stuff. And Psalm 77, the first 10 verses, it seems very discouraging. And I know we're going to cover a lot of this with Psalms because David seemed really good at doing that. He's crying out to God, but then he turns a corner from verse 11 on. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is I want to savor the positive, but there's a lot of things that are real negative out there. But we can cry out to God because he hears us. Does that make sense?
No, that's exactly right. And
Amen.
a lot of the Psalms, you're exactly right. A lot of the Psalms are like this. And I did put this example in too, from Psalm 73, just a few Psalms before that. And both of these Psalms, 73, 77, they're kind of right at the heart of the book. So if you think about it, 150 Psalms, these are pretty much right in the middle. And we're talking about Psalms being healing. So they're not only healing physically, emotionally, socially, but I also believe there's spiritual healing because, like you pointed out, Psalm 77, the psalmist is dealing with difficult things. It's true in Psalm 73. Psalm 73, if you look how it starts with something that you could savor. The very first part of the verse, surely God is good to Israel. Um, and Israel was God's people in that day. God loves his people. God's good to them. Um, then the psalmist mentions this phrase, to those who are pure in heart. That might seem a little distancing because, if we look at ourselves, we may not seem all that pure. But the psalmist then says, but as for me, my feet had almost slipped. I nearly lost my foothold, for I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. And he goes on, he says, they have no struggles. Their bodies are healthy and strong. They're free from common human burdens. They're not plagued by human ills. Therefore, pride is their necklace. They clothe themselves with violence. So this is one of these, this kind of spiritual dynamic. Why are the good people suffering and the bad people, quote unquote, bad people, seem to be prospering? That they have no regard for God. And if you're not clear, that's what the psalmist is talking about. From their callous hearts comes iniquity. Their evil imaginations, no limits. They scoff. Speaking of spiritual things, that they're negative. They speak with malice, with arrogance. They threaten oppression. Their mouths they claim to heaven, and their tongues take possession of the earth. So these are not people that are honoring God, and it seems like everything's going good for them. And so the psalmist is struggling with this, and they're the ungodly. They're always at ease. They increase in riches. And he gets to the point where he says, surely I've cleansed my heart in vain. I've washed my hands in innocence. All day long I've been plagued and I've been chastened every morning. And here's what I wanted to, emphasize in this. Just like you point out, Stacy, in Psalm 77, there's multiple examples of this where you could say, well, I'm reading this. It says like give up. I mean, the psalmist says, like, I'm just going to throw in the towel, but keep reading on. And if you don't see the big picture in that psalm, just read the next one. But in this psalm, when you get to this critical verse, and let's see, I didn't throw that critical verse in. How did I do that? Okay, well, the critical verse, go in your Bibles to Psalm 73. Where this whole psalm pivots is right after these words. In Psalm 73, right after verse 14, when the psalmist basically seems like he's ready to throw in the towel, verse 15 and verse 16, he says, it's too painful for me. It's like I want and here's where it changes. Verse 17, until I went into the sanctuary of God. And then
Amen.
stood
Amen.
therein. So this is another aspect to the Psalms that that I'm glad we had a chance to touch on. And that is that as we read through the Psalms, it's going to expose us to difficulties. It's going to expose us to things that we can relate to. Like, why am I going through bad things when I'm trying to follow God? Why do people who don't honor God seem to prosper? And those questions like that are going to be answered as we go through. And it's as we, in this psalm, it says the psalmist came into the sanctuary to God's presence. And so, I put up this slide multiple times, and my wife reminded me that I couldn't spell in number 5. It should be they reveal the incarnate Christ. But the
I
point
didn't
is,
say it like that,
Psalm-
honey.
the Psalms focus us on the character of God. And many of you highlighted that God is our shield. He's the one who watches over us. He's the one who doesn't slumber. He's our very present help in trouble. So the Psalms remind us of the character of God. And I just, appreciate the fact that we're able to do this journey together. And it's an open platform. You can invite others to join us. We're going to start next week by going through Psalm 1, and we'll try to, walk our way through the Psalms, and really, take time to hear what you have to say. If you want to quote prepare, you don't have to, but read Psalm 1 and 2. I don't know how far we'll get next week, but we do also have a special discussant who will be joining us from time to time. I was hoping he could join us this week, and then I could at least introduce you to him. His name is Pastor Brian Choi, and I think there was some question about his schedule tonight, but Pastor Choi is a ordained minister in Michigan who's a hospice chaplain. So he's dealing with people every day at the end of life, and he may have been actually called away to deal with someone. But he's going to be one of the people that kind of helps us on this journey too, because it's this mix of some of the most harsh realities in life that we see in Psalms, but it calls us to focus on the positive virtues, the positive qualities of God, the positive qualities of life, and it helps us deal with life's most difficult issues and calls us into community. So what the plan is each night we'll spend about an hour going through the Psalms, and then we will do something where we record the first hour. We'll close here in a moment with a word of prayer, but then the idea is to keep the Zoom open. We won't record it; it won't be available after the program. But because we're talking about coming into community, we're talking about prayer and praise and dealing with difficult situations. We also thought it would be nice to provide a setting where we could pray for one another if there's those who are interested in that aspect. So we're going to formally close things with a prayer right now. Then we're going to stop the recording. So this presentation and your dialogue will be available for others who couldn't join us tonight, or if you want to go back and look at a certain portion, or you wish you were taking notes, but you were driving in your car at the time, you can access just by going through that. If you registered, and because you joined us, we know you're registered, there's going to be a landing page where you'll be able to access the other videos, a website where you can access the previous presentations. And this one should be available sometime tomorrow. May not be available right tonight. Okay, but let's have a closing word of prayer, and then we'll have some time for individual prayer if you'd like that. Father in heaven, thank you for directing our minds to a book that by its very titles seems to draw us into community, focus us on praise, focus on elements that are healing both from you and with other people. Continue to bless us on this journey, bring just the right people together each week, and help this be something that not only ministers to those who can actively participate, but to those who join us after the presentations. We thank you that we could trust you to do that, for we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, well, we're going to end the recording on that note, and then we'll give you a chance to share if you have any special things on your heart that you'd like to thank God for, or you have prayer requests.